Hello. Today I'm going to be doing a little impromptu showcase of what's coming up in the next version of Hearts of Demons Baron 0.10.0. I know initially we were going to do a full release, but I decided to do this instead. So what's the big deal with this? So the main goal of this one has been trimming stuff down. There have been a lot of cool features added over the years, but there's a lot of things that I feel like just bloated the mod without actually adding anything. And we're going to be going over today what's new, what's been removed, and then afterwards I'll talk a little bit about the philosophy of everything and why it was removed and whatnot. So let's get started. So I'm loaded up here in the test map, as you can see. And so what's been removed? First, Necromancy's been completely removed. So Defile, Clone, and Hydra have all been removed. They didn't really add much, and a lot of times it could be really frustrating to get certain spells, mostly Defile, instead of the intended destruction spell. And it led to a lot of really bad situations early on in WoDs that expected you to have some kind of rocket launcher, which Incineration is the mod's rocket launcher. Second, by switching over to Claws, Spell Strikes have been completely removed. They got removed because, again, they overcomplicated melee, which should just be as simple as hitting dudes. You still have clawing and punching and ground pounding, and you still have like the combos, but now it's just main fire and alt fire. Reload, zoom, do nothing. So let's start with magic. So one big thing that happened, and I'm gonna come in here, get some MP for all this. A big change is the dual hands thing is gone. It's just fires and alt fires now. The dual hand things was really cool, but it was really overcomplicated and it was really, really slow. Like way too slow for my tastes. So it's been reverted back to way before there was a dual hand system. It's just now, if we go and get some spells, I'm going to avoid the soul gems for now. So now it's just reload cycles you forward, zoom cycles you back, and that's it. And then it's fire and alt fire. Each of the spells has been rebalanced and retweaked, and to accommodate for this, like your Baron balls are now faster and you alternate hands, and notice the new rune effects. Incineration now scales off of level in an interesting way. Now it's been rebalanced to be more in line with what I call the Baron ball standard. And now the max charge you can get is equal to your level. So you can't cheese early encounters by just running around with a fully charged Baron ball. Like if we go and grab a soul gem and get a level, now I can charge it up to 1, but it only goes up to 1. So I still can't go around cheesing everything, but I can charge it up for a stronger ball. Overall, things are weaker now, but I think this works to make the mod more engaging. You're still extremely powerful, and you're still strong enough to handle like slaughter maps and shit. It's just you're not so overwhelmingly powerful that playing the game feels kind of pointless. Also, notice how your overheal is now limited to 3,000 instead of being infinite. But the bar wraps with colors. So you have your Incineration. Immolation's currently in the middle of all sorts of rebalances and tweaks. I just can't seem to get it right. And we'll save Catastrophe for last. So, with all that, the buttons now are just main fire, alt fire, zoom, and reload. User 1 is no longer Apex. That's because Apexes are now the alt fires. And it's not a toggle, it's just a single cast thing. This goes with making everything a lot simpler, and there's less systems you have to juggle around with. You can just start blasting dudes. Each Apex has also been completely overhauled. They're all lightning themed, there's new casting, but it keeps the red. So what are the new Apexes? So you have your Baron Ball, which is normal. You have your Apex Baron Ball, which does triple damage. And let me run around here to the Zombie Man. I have Durla loaded, so it's... Or Durla Monsters loaded, so none of the shit's loaded right, because it's... But not only that, it also pierces through weaker enemies. So it can be used to sweep crowds of weaker enemies without, but it doesn't, it still hits stronger enemies. And it does triple damage compared to a normal Baron Ball, but it's much, much slower to cast. You have your Incineration, which the apex of that is the Charge Punch. The Charge Punch no longer has unlimited range, and it only explodes when you hit an enemy. But it does a lot of damage, like a lot of damage. And it has a consistent cost of 30 and then 1 while traveling. And the higher your level, the further it travels. So you have that to look forward to. It was formerly one of the spell strikes, and now I wanted to keep it because I really liked it and it was a fan favorite. You also, with Immolation, you have what I call Wrath, which after a brief delay summons down a bunch of lightning bolts in an area around you. The higher your level, the bigger the area, and the more lightning bolts get summoned down. This is by far the strongest non-catastrophe move you have, but it has a very limited range, and its damage is very unpredictable, because the bolts have a random delay, and it's only in a set radius around you. This radius doesn't get very big. It's like 384 map units at max. And to give you an idea how small it is, 35 map units is a meter, so it's only about 10 meters. It's not a very big area, but the damage is huge. Most things will just fucking die. I do not have the Catastrophe Apex ready yet, Armageddon, but it's in the works. Instead, though, I've been redoing Catastrophe. Catastrophe's been plaguing me for a while because it's the BFG tier spell, but it has never really felt BFG tier. It's been strong, no doubt, but not quite BFG strong. So with this latest, now it calls down 3, they spread fire, and after a delay, they explode and spread more fire. It's really laggy right now. I am working on making the lag less. This is like fresh off the presses though, so I haven't had a chance to do any of that kind of optimization. I also need to mess with the radius a bit, obviously, because it's going in a straight line, and that's not good. So there's that. So that's pretty exciting, right? Right? I hope. Please be exciting. But yeah, so that's Catastrophe. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, the spells have been simplified to just main fire cast, alt fire apex cast. No toggling modes, no messing with little mini menus, none of that. Guns have similarly been simplified. I need to go grab an enchantment room. So none of the guns have any fancy like reloads or zooms anymore. So like the Moloch used to have this thing where you hit reload and it like locked it and you could fire 6 missiles at once. Doesn't have that anymore. Again, this was to simplify it. It was overly complicated, didn't really add anything. Just was systems and complications for the sake of making the mod seem more complex than it actually is. But, much like spells, every gun is now just fire and alt fire. Fire to shoot, alt fire for the magic shot. You need the enchantment rune to do the magic shot, and that's it. That's every gun. Alt fire magic shot, main fire shot. Main fire shot, alt fire magic shot. All the magic shots have been overhauled too. The Belial now does a delayed cluster explosion. The Gao and the M2 now do a weaker shot that sets enemies on fire. Let me go summon something to showcase that. We have our Spider Mastermind. Spider Mastermind's on fire. And this fire can spread to other enemies too, as long as it's burning. So even after the corpse is burning, it can spread to other enemies and has a chance to spread itself on the enemy to stack. While I'm here, fragments have been redone. Now a lot more things spawn fragments when you find duplicates. But it takes 5 fragments to make a soul gem now. So progression is a lot slower, but a lot more consistent. You also get more out of it. And we'll get to that in a bit. The Moloch has been reworked again. Now its missiles do the spreading of napalm and also set enemies on fire. So it combined the old Bruiser mode stuff with its old alt fire, and the trade-off is it doesn't do a lot of direct damage. Like, its direct damage is very comparable to vanilla rocket launcher. Its alt fire shoots a magic missile that doesn't spread any ground fire, but it does set enemies on that green fire, which again can spread to other enemies and can multiply itself as a low chance. The Azazel is a whole different beast now. Instead of having the multiple ammo modes, which again was confusing, arbitrary, and stupid. Stupid's not really the right word, but it was overly complicated for the sake of being overly complicated. Now it has its own ammo, Azazel bolts, which spawn over cells. You might have seen them over here. These are these big boys. It's a lot stronger per hit, and it has a much better rate of fire. It's also very, very accurate. The main feature, though, is its alt fire. It's magic shot. So you do not need the enchantment rune for the magic shot. And in fact, the enchantment rune does nothing for it. However, it starts off as a simple shot that just does double damage. And that's it. It costs 10 MP. But as you find spells, it gains additional effects. If you find incineration, you can hold it down and charge it. You see that green bar going across? That's its charge. When it's fully charged, it releases itself, so you can't travel around with it, and it does quintuple damage when fully charged. So it does some serious damage. Additionally, every level you get makes it charge faster. Every level you get also increases its damage by 20%. So it starts off doubled, increases by further by 20%, and then it can charge up to another quintuple. It leads to it being one of the most powerful moves in the mod. Immolation, when you pick that up, lets it pierce enemies. 1 enemy per level. So at max, it can pierce 7 enemies. And then finally, Catastrophe adds this explosion effect. This explosion does pretty good damage and a pretty good radius. And all this for 10 MP and 1 ammo. So the Azazel is a much more, interesting weapon. It's a lot more satisfying to use. And it actually, progresses really well as you do. So that's the guns. And the Apex modes. So some other stuff that's been altered is your levels are now much more progressive, and leveling in general has more effects. And then of course the level max effects, which those have changed a bit. I need to respawn the level to get more, levels to showcase that. So, okay, we're level max now. So, on top of the usual Carnage stuff, each spell has an additional effect at level max. Your Baron Balls do triple. Your Apex Baron Balls, which are called Baron Bolts, and the spell is called Shock, is also triple, but with a much tighter spread. Incineration charges up at its fastest rate and can charge up to its highest level. Eventually, this will get an additional max level Baron Ball that, if you remember the very old Fireball alt fire, it'll do that. Incineration, Wrath has its maximum bolts and its maximum area, which is 55 bolts, and each of those bolts does the damage of a Doom missile. And if a bolt manages to directly hit an enemy, it'll deal extremely high damage, enough to one-shot a Hell Knight. So, but it's random, and the damage is spread out in a weird way. It is reliable when surrounded by mobs of weaker enemies, but when you're surrounded by mobs of stronger enemies, it may be better just hit them with the Immolation. which, and this is currently under construction because it's a little OP right now. Immolation now at level max. 1 affects bosses and 2 sets them on that green fire again. It needs some work. It's not quite there yet. It's, as you saw, it's extremely overpowered, which that is one of the goals with this rework is to make things not so disgustingly overpowered. Immolation's been a problem child during the whole process. And then Catastrophe does nothing yet. Catastrophe's still very whip, but I wanted to get this video out to let people know, hey, this is what's going on. And then finally, the Azazel is at its strongest and fastest charging when you're at level max. So that's what's up and up for Baron. Things are getting trimmed down, streamlined. It's a lot simpler to play. Hopefully funner to play as a result. No juggling mini menus, no trying to remember 7 different spells, and then also their Apex versions. It's just 4 spells, 4 Apexes, based on old stuff. No juggling spell strikes, no maintaining them. Everything's been rebalanced to make everything a little harder. Not too hard. The Baron's still by no means weak, but things are just a little harder. And while I'm doing this last bit where I'm just kind of rambling, let's play. So, why? A lot of you are probably asking, Bronazord, why did you do this? So, I mentioned briefly how it really felt like the mod was getting overly bloated, and like it was really dragging the whole mod down. The mod was really feature creeped out. It had a lot of cool systems, but it just felt like it had systems for the sake of having systems. This is entirely my fault because I didn't think to have any kind of restrictions, and I couldn't say no to, hey, can we put this feature in? I couldn't say no. So it's entirely my own fault that the mod got extremely overbloated, and it suffered as a result. So this is my attempt to, like, take the mod back, so to say. Because, like, I also had a lot where it just didn't feel like the mod was my own anymore, and it was very difficult to work on a result because of all these extra systems and shit. So I trimmed it back down to the last point where I felt the mod was my own and started working off of it from there. So far, at least in testing, the results have been really good. I'm hoping they are actually good, and that's just not a result of my ego, which I'm constantly afraid of progress and feeling like progress is good being a result of my own ego. And from here on out, I'm going to be a lot more careful in all my mods. This has been a learning experience, for sure, in all my mods to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's part of why I haven't been working on Revenant. It's because I'm a little worried that it's getting feature creeped out already, and it just hit, like, its first beta. Whereas this is now, like, oh god, the 50th beta of Baron. Version 0.1.0. After we started doing versionings. Which I guess was, like, beta time. And I was initially going to push towards a release version, but it was extremely hard to work on the mod because, like I said, it didn't feel like my mod anymore. And I didn't want to release a mod that I felt like wasn't what I would want out of it. Because I feel like any updates past that, it would be really hard to work on it without that feeling of it not being mine showing. And I didn't want that. For the sake of having a better mod that people could play, and a mod that I wanted to play, I did this so-called remake. A lot of people are calling it a remake. I don't think that's accurate because I didn't start from scratch or anything. Like, I'm still using a lot of the hand sprites, clearly. A lot of the, like, newer animations are still being used, but it was kind of a revert before going backwards to go forwards. So what does this mean for the future? Honestly, we're still on very good pace. I'm currently working with typical Sonic O fan and Hyper Ultra 64 on sprite work for both the HUD and weapons to just have them be more consistent with each other, because like Lieutenant Blam has moved on to bigger and better things, and his efforts have been greatly appreciated and really brought a lot of character to the mod, but it's just a consistency issue, and I cannot call on him to whip up some new sprites for stuff to fix it, so I'm having to reach out to other sources. I'm hoping it makes the mod as a whole feel a lot better put together and more consistent and more like high grade and professional, so to say. The Diablo is coming sooner rather than later. Initially, that was going to wait until after release, but now that I've trimmed down the mod, it finally feels like I can add it in. For those that don't know, the Diablo was a weapon teased, oh god, like a year and a half ago. That was a demonic warhammer. It was teased, some work started on it, but it never came to be. Well, now it's coming to be. At the time, finally feels right to bring in Hammer Time. So, that's something to really look forward to. I'm looking forward to it, working on it, but I gotta finish the spells first. You saw Catastrophe still very whip. It's honestly felt very whip for a very long time, but I'm hoping to finally get it to a point where it feels complete. We'll see though. We'll definitely see. Don't take my word until we see some results. But this whole video has just kind of been me showing you that yeah, I've been working on stuff, so don't worry. Baron's very much alive. He's just been in surgery, been at Weight Watchers, been getting some liposuction. Whatever analogy you think works. But yeah, so long story short, the mod felt really overcomplicated. I'm simplifying it to a much tighter experience. So far, I think it makes it better overall, but we'll see once it hits the public. I am expecting to have it out before the end of the year. Hell, at the rate I'm going at right now, and this is not a concrete release date, but I should have it out early October. That is liable to change as my motivation and mood swings, which is often. But at the current pace, early October is looking like when this will be ready. It is available to the public. It is the remake branch on the repo, but it's very unstable. It's constantly being worked on. Eventually, it'll be merged into WIP, and the remake branch will disappear. But this is the direction it's going in now, is I'm working off of this much more simplified Baron vision. And this weaker Baron vision. I'm hoping it makes everything more engaging and fun. It makes the progression feel more worthwhile. To give a little more details about how it's better balanced, I mentioned the Baron Ball standard before. Basically, so we all know how Baron Balls do 8 to 64 damage. Well, we should know. If you didn't, you just learned something. And then Baron Melee does 10 to 80. So, with that in mind, I retooled all of the damages based around 8s, basically. With the exception of Immolation, because it being 8 made it way, way too strong. And speaking of, that's my goal tonight, is to get Immolation. Because as it stands right now, Immolation's kind of grossly underpowered. And that's my goal of tonight, is to get that taken care of. Because that's unacceptable. So, spells are now a lot more consistent with each other and are weaker overall, but are still very, very strong. I.e., a fully powered up Incineration can still take out a group of Revenants, but even with a direct hit, it cannot take out a Baron. The Baron will only have like 30 hit points left, so he'll be barely standing, but it cannot take out a Baron in one shot fully charged anymore. This is partially as just kind of an overall balance thing because Incineration was kind of insanely overpowered. It still is. It's still by far the most like mana efficient to damage spell in your arsenal. But the problem before is that the Baron was so strong, he made other monsters look really, really weak, including other Barons, and that doesn't do. Like, part of the goal of HOD is to really make the demons of Doom seem really, really, like, strong. Like, there's so much lurking out there that we don't see that can just whoop our ass if it had the chance. But still be, like, let's say respectful to the demons as they are now. And it was just disrespectful to how strong I interpret Barons of Hell and Hell Knights and Cyber Demons to be. So things got retooled as kind of that point of, okay, the Baron is a strong Baron, so he, even being a stronger Baron, he would have an average time taking out another Baron. Kind of like Doom Guy has an average time taking out another person. Same concept. The Baron is the Doom Guy of Barons, whereas Doom Guy is the Doom Guy of humans, if that makes sense. Next was his guns. So the idea of the guns originally was to act as like an in-between while you were getting stronger with your spells. Eventually, guns kind of turn into their own, like... Sledge put it nicely, the guns were designed to fuck. And I didn't want to take that away in this remake. So the guns still, while acting as a stopgap between max power, magic, and starting, the guns are still very, very powerful, and they're consistent. Their damages have been largely stabilized. They don't do as wild of a damage range as spells do, so they're a lot more reliable in certain situations, and certain guns, like the GAU, the GAU, are better against bosses than any of your spells are. Which is another thing, is I wanted to bring the boss factor back to bosses. Because, like, bosses were just kind of a joke before. And now, like, Cyber Demons, especially, are now, like, actually threats that you need to show some finesse against, or you're going to get your ass kicked. And that's not just, like, Cyber Demons within mods. Even vanilla Cyber Demons are now an actual registerable effect? Threat. I was thinking about the effects of the barrel, which have been tweaked. So, but like, yeah, guns still are more than strong enough to stand on their own and no longer feel like you cast them aside as soon as you get max level spells. Part of that is how their enchantments have all been reworked, with the theme being fire and explosions, because that's what the Baron's all about. The Apex stuff is lightning themed, partially because I thought it'd be cool, and to establish that the Apex stuff is not the Baron's inherent power, it's something else's mixed with his. And then they're red as a reference to Doom 64 Barons, which throw red fireballs. But so guns stand stronger on their own, and they kind of have a purpose outside of just acting like a crutch while you get levels and spells. The Apex spells also are very expensive, and their cost does not scale down as you level, unlike normal spells, to help keep them balanced, because they're very powerful. They're still very, like, mana efficient to their damage, but they are costly. Shock costs 3. It costs 3 or 5. I keep changing it. I don't know what it costs right now. I think it costs 3 right now. Smite, which is the punch, costs 30, and then 1 while you're traveling per tick, so it's limited. And then Wrath costs 50. Armageddon, when it's in, will cost 300 to Catastrophe's 100, which is an ass load, but Armageddon's going to be way hella over the top with its damage and its explosions and its everything. I'm kind of afraid to hype it up too much because I won't be able to live up to it, but I'm excited to start working on it and going absolutely fucking bonkers with everything it does. So for the sake of this not being 30 minutes of me rambling, I'm going to wrap this up by saying, things are getting simpler. hopefully it makes them a lot more fun. And I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear if you think this is good, if this is bad, like if you think this was overdue. Like I want to hear from you guys. I'm always open to people's feedback. I pay a lot of attention to comments on videos, to what people say in the threads, to what people say on Discord, and I try to watch every Baron video that comes out. Like, even if I don't always respond, and I don't always comment, I am seeing it, I am thinking about it, I am taking them to heart. So none of you guys are ignored. I just, if I have a response that I don't think people will like, I have a hard time saying it. And then some people just say whatever bullshit they want, and those comments are not worth responding to. Like, everyone who says it's a Guncaster knockoff, if you think that, that's fine. That's your opinion. I don't. I've done a lot to make sure it's different from Guncaster, but if you think that, that's your problem. If you think this is the dumbest thing you've ever seen, why is the Baron using guns? You're more than entitled to that opinion. Ultimately this is my mod. I make it for myself. I make it to make myself happy, and I share it because I hope it can make other people happy too. But I still take everyone's feedback into consideration, especially criticisms, because I feel like for a large part of the development, I've been surrounded by yes men, or at least people who are afraid to like criticize certain points of the mod, and I'm trying to broaden my horizons more with that. So I definitely keep an eye out on everyone's comments. I know so far in testing, this remake has been pretty well received. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Like, a lot more fun than I was having before. But I don't take that too seriously because that could just be me tooting my own horn. But if more outsiders are having a good time with it, then I'm definitely thinking I'm on the right track. So going forward, this is the basis of the version that will be released. I'm expecting a 0.10, and then a 0.11, and then any little tweaks in between for shit like sounds, animations, and bug fixes, and little balance tweaks. But I'm expecting 0.11 will be the last beta version, and we might see a full release version before the end of the year. Maybe. Depends on how long animation stuff takes and how long this weapon sprite project takes. I am commissioning artists, so I cannot get them all at once. Artists are busy people. I'm not swimming in money to commission them for maximum speed. So, when it's done is ultimately when it'll be out. But I'm really excited as to the direction Baron's going. I'm really excited to be working on it again. I'm really excited to be sharing it with you guys. And I'm really excited to hear from you. So, as I always say in threads, keep me posted. Thanks for tuning in. I rambled on for a little too long, but that's fine. I can just put a little disclaimer of this is the crunch stuff. This is when the rambling starts. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. And I can't wait to hear from you. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And until next time, see you around.